I've always, believed, in terms of, thinking global, but act locally, correct? So same process, same approach, but adapt, your strategies, to the different countries.
Welcome, my lovely people, to yet another fabulous episode of the B2B Sales Trends podcast. In sales, we talk a lot about execution, but not enough about the orchestration of it. The truth is, great sellers don't just plan their pipeline, they plan people. They don't know exactly sometimes who to bring into the room, and they need to really plan for that, when to bring them in and how to make every conversation count. That's the world of our guest today, of Ludovic Neveu. I hope I pronounced that right. Ludovic is the
Perfect.
Senior Vice President of Sales at Tricentis, and he has built global teams that win because they plan like leaders and not like gamblers. In today's episode, we'll unpack how to design executive engagement with intent, from picking the right internal allies to briefing them before the big meeting, and why that discipline really separates predictable performers from those, who rely on luck. Ludovic, welcome to the B2B Sales Trends podcast.
Harry, thank you very much for having me on the podcast.
Absolutely. You've led sales teams across some of the most competitive regions, Ludovic, in tech, specifically from startups to enterprise. For those of you who don't know your journey, can you share a little bit about how you came to lead large global teams and what you've learned about what truly drives that consistent performance that everybody is after?
Sure. So about me, so I've been working for US software companies, mostly across EMEA for the last, 30 years. And these have been, public, private companies. I even had, the chance to experience, with SolarWinds, an IPO, which was interesting. I've been leading, sales and marketing team all during that time. Be it, inside sales, partner sales, channel sales, enterprise sales. But ultimately, I've always been owning a number, and I actually drive revenue growth, by building really kind of disciplined, scalable, sales process. As you mentioned, I'm currently SVP sales at Tricentis. Tricentis, is the leading company, in terms of, AI software quality platform. We help, companies de-risk their business transformation. I also mentor startup, and right now I'm mentoring startup, with the leading, we started Tiado, which is the leading, startup accelerator in Central Europe.
That's interesting. Thank you for the kind introduction, Ludovic. We've both seen how planning can meet very different needs and can mean very different things for different people. For some, it's pipeline hygiene. For others, it's strategy, right? When you talk about planning, what does it actually mean to you, and why do you see it as a foundation of sales success?
Correct. So I think you're right. I'm a big believer in terms of not planning, and I believe that planning is at least 50% of the job done. And yet, you still see experienced salespeople that either skip planning or get surprised, or as an example, arrive at the end of the quarter with only one deal, and they
Mm.
believe there will be zero, or there was no zero. So if you look at what is planning, if you take like a concept that everyone will understand. Let's imagine you're trying to build a house. You don't go and just start, building your house, from day one. You first think about the requirement. You then look at the design. Then eventually you will look at, building. But all of that, will be iterative. You will be looking at testing what you do. And that's how, ultimately you will actually build the right house. Well, sales is no different, right? Is that, planning is absolutely key, right? And I think that, when you look at it, is that, and I've not been the one, saying that, but a dream written down, becomes a target. A
Uh,
target broken down into several steps, becomes a plan, and a plan, supported by actions becomes reality.
right.
So the way I look at that, and for me, it actually starts from day one, right? The day you get your target, this is where you really have no need to put your planning in place. So that actually starts, by your territory planning and how you will get to your target, right? You look at either existing customers, you look at new customers, you look at your competitors, you look at the verticals, you look at all the data that will allow you to build a plan in the correct way. And my recommendation is I'm always selling salespeople plan, or if you get, like let's say a $2 million target, plan on 2.5 because you will have a way better way of getting to your target if you actually plan higher to your target than if you actually plan below, because then you will have a big chance not to end below. So for me, it actually starts there, right? And then you go into your type of account planning, uh, and where the type of the type of planning that type of normal type of planning, and then but what is important is about building consistent um, being consistent and repeatable type of process that you don't get to your numbers just by a case, but because it's actually being planned. And so uh really have consistent and repeatable process. That's the way I would actually have define it.
That's interesting when you say, let's assume you have a $2 million target. You are going to now let's plan for 2.5. Um,
Well, I read with sales guy that everyone wants not to get to accelerators, right? Everyone wants to get some money, right? And also, I think that's not the best way to plan it.
have you, in your experience, do you have some stats or so sort of rough figures when you ask for these extra percent to say, great, here's your goal, and here is your, the goal that you should be planning for to make sure you hit that. What's have you had some stats and some the experience of how people have really then take that to the next level? What's the percentage of those salespeople who then actually go above their $2 million target?
I'm not sure I have the full statistics, but I think that's another way I would look at that. Is for sure higher achievers. I've always actually planned over the target,
Yeah.
and you will never see someone reaching the target if they've not done the right planning. That's the way I don't have the full statistics around that, but it's amazing when you plan things in the correct way, when you actually look at the target, you have a better chance not of not reaching it by type of reaching higher to that.
Right.
It's the
Right.
same
Right.
thing, if you do sport and you go and run, you know, the way you when you actually prepare yourself for running, and you always type of stretch yourself, right? And so always put a goal which is slightly higher or above you.
Yeah. And it's interesting in exercise and in especially endurance exercises, the idea of you know train hard and race easy, right? If you over prepare, the race is actually a lot easier. The training is harder, but the race is easier. So that's an interesting sort of context and a connection that we can make to that. And so, most sellers think of planning as something that happens after a deal really appears and comes up and sort of appears on the horizon. And now I'm planning because I'm chasing. The best ones really plan before that even appears. And they plan for people as much as the pipeline. Why is it important for sellers to plan not just the deal itself, but the executive engagement around it?
So I think if you think, complex, enterprise sales, um, it's important to identify and address the needs of all the stakeholders involved into into those deals, and that's actually include internal and external customers.
Right.
So your internal customers would be your CFO, would be your CRO. You might have not to go and sell to them, but external. You will start, with obvious, which is usually in type of tech sales. Someone will ask you for a demo. Sometimes they'll ask you for a POC. They'll ask you for a POV. They'll ask you for testing the product into their environment. They will ask you for proving the business value and whatever is that business value, right? It's either type of decreasing costs, it's about increasing productivity, whatever. And that's not the obvious. But you need to think about, all the other actors that, are part of an enterprise deals. And so the next one is legal, right? And are you going to turn to transaction on my papers or their papers? Security. Let's be very careful that today, security assessment and security assessment, is absolutely key in a type of number of companies. As an example, today at Tricentis, if you've not convinced, if you've not convinced our security team that the products that you're trying to sell, is not going to pass all the security measures, there's no way that we're going to buy it, because, even though, that product, is going to be important, right? But then is that, other areas, will be obviously procurement, will be finance, and so what is important is that when you actually look at all of that, you need to plan for all these, different thread, to go, and to work in parallel. And my recommendation is that, you need to start as early as possible so that, you don't get surprised and you don't delay a deal because of that. So it's important that, you establish timelines, and you have these type of parallel tracks, not going, going along. Yeah.
So we've all had moments when we brought in an executive, we brought him or her into a deal, and it was a bit too early. Sometimes it's a bit too late or without any alignment, and it all went wrong. It backfired, right? How do you coach your teams to recognize when and how to bring in these senior leaders into the process?
That's a very interesting question. And what I would tell you is that across the line, and what I express with my team, but I actually have seen that, with other companies as well, is you never call high enough. We never call high enough part of the sales process. And I think that, if you listen to that podcast, is unless you've actually reached the CEO, you've not reached high enough. And if you think about, the way deals are now being approved, if you not go and not sell a 15, 20K deal, you can potentially not get like a project manager, an IT manager to approve. As soon as you go over 100K, that goes not to a CIO, that goes to a CTO. You go to a multi-million-dollar deals, you probably need to have the CFO approval. You probably need the CEO approval. So you need to adapt your sales approach to that reality of the model, right? And as such, and so my recommendation, and you were about asking on when do we not get, and what is my recommendation for not bringing executives? We have a mandate at Tricentis, which is any type of 100K plus, you need to think about type of executive alignment, right? And I think that it's about selling to the person that ultimately will decide, or will be an influencer, or will actually make will give the signature. Ultimately, in sale, people buy from people, right?
Yeah.
So you sell yourself, you sell your products, you sell your company. So if the CEO or the CFO ultimately is going to be the last, the person not to go and sign, why should he sign if he doesn't know you? Or if he doesn't understand the value you kind of not bringing, correct?
Right. Right. So how I've seen already a lot of meetings when, you bring in an executive and the executive isn't prepared for the meeting. I mean, they show up with their C-suite title, and that's great, but they're not really able to speak the language. They're not really prepared for the opportunity and so forth. How do you brief your executives so they walk in with confidence, with credibility, and are really aligned with the message to what you want to land? How do you do that?
Yeah, so I think that if you fail type of bringing an executive, is that that usually happens because you've not brought the executive at the right moment, and you've
Uh,
not done the planning of actually bringing that executive. I'll
uh,
give you an example. Is that we are one day before the end of the month, and every single time it happens, I would have one sales guy asking me and say, "Oh, can you go and reach out to that customers because they became blind, they're not responding to me. Can you engage?" No.
uh,
Executive type of engagement is about bringing people early, maintain consistency, and being able to build a relation so that when you need it, you actually can give them a call at the end of the quarter, right? you know Bringing and trying to have an executive call at the beginning of the quarter, right at the end of the quarter, if you've not built that relation, is not going to work, right? So as such, when you've actually decided that you're going to bring an executive, my recommendation is that first of all, you match on the role to the needs. So
uh,
depending of what is the need, specifically in that situation, you could bring your CRO, you could bring your CPO, you could bring your CFO, you could bring your CEO. And your question is about how do you brief your type of new executives? And what I would say is that focus on the outcome. I
right.
think the most important is tell your executive what you want to achieve. If it's at the beginning, that could be access to different teams or starting a POC, correct? As an example.
Uh,
Focus on the outcome, give them, be concise, give them a one pager about, the important things about the customer, some of the relations, but don't
right.
tell them what they need to do because if they're like your executives, they will know how to do that, correct?
Yeah. Right. Uh, Ludovic, I know you've worked across multiple regions and cultures, and that typically brings different challenges with him and exciting moments too, of course. Um, where in these different cultures and multiple regions, executive engagement might look and feel different. What have you learned about adapting your approach across the different markets, and what principles always hold true and that you can share with the audience?
So I've always believed in terms of thinking global but act locally, correct? So same process, same approach, but adapt your strategies to the different countries. And
Mm,
one which is obvious, would be local language, like for example, like France, Germany, some of the southern, European countries, sometimes Central Europe, people will feel more comfortable to speak, the local language. And so if you can bring an executive that is that speaks the local language, it's actually better. Even though if you bring an executive uh, and that's not mandatory, correct? That about the local language, but sometimes it's better. I think that what you would see as well is that uh, countries like Germany, like Nordics, people like more factuals, and so bringing a chief product officer, a chief technology officer that will speak about the product, the vision, might be better than a CEO or CRO. At the same time, you look at, for example, some of the Middle Eastern region, you need to go as high as possible, because it's about, being, it's about, being proud, and about, making sure that, you've met, the top of highest person into the company. But I think
Yeah.
that if you look at across the different countries, in all these cases, what is important is to do it, is to make
Yeah.
sure that, you try, and this is not a guarantee that you will close the deals in top of 100% of the
Right.
cases, but 100% of the cases, it will either allow you to stop losing your time, because the executive on the other side will have no issues telling you, you know what, it's not on my priority, it's not on my budget. Nice
Yeah.
talking to you, but that's not going to work, right?
Right.
Or it might accelerate, the deal, or it will just continue, but the day when it comes, to the signature, it will actually help. And I think that, the other thing I would say on the subject is careful about matching titles on top of N+1, correct? Like bringing your CEO to an IT manager might not be the best thing to do. But if someone, if you can get, an SVP on the other side, bring an SVP. And I'll tell you, your salesperson, and sometimes, salespeople have a challenging type of understanding on, hey, why do I need to bring my boss? Why do I need to bring my CRO on the call? Because they will not say anything different than what I can say. And I agree. Most of the time, sales, account executives are more knowledgeable than any of the executives. But it's just a title play, right? SVP speak to SVP, CEO speak to CEOs.
Yeah, absolutely. Ludovic, we try to keep these to 20, 25 minutes, and we're getting close to that time now. Are you open for a quick fire round? A few fired
Sure.
away questions? Great.
Sure.
What would you say sales leaders should start, stop, and keep doing to make executive engagement part of their team's DNA? What should sales leaders start, stop, and keep doing to make executive engagement part of their team's DNA? What would that be?
So I think that, the first one would be about, having a consistent, repeatable, process, measure your actions, be data driven. Number two, stop assuming things. Don't believe all what your champion is telling you. Be critical, get beyond your comfort zone, boundaries, kind of getting access
Right.
to executive or getting higher is sometimes not challenging. So always
Right.
call higher and challenge yourself. And the last thing is be honest with yourself. You perfectly know where your deal is. And so stop bullshitting yourself,
Right.
Hope is not a strategy.
Hope is not a strategy. That's quite right. What, in your opinion, are the top 3 skills that make salespeople truly elite? The top 3 skills that make salespeople truly elite. What would those be?
So one would be trust,
Yeah.
sync partnership, build long-term relationship.
Right.
2 would be strategic.
Right.
Don't go and just sell. Think about the customer needs, think about helping them. If you actually put yourself into their shoes, this is where you will actually be the most successful, because you will do things for your customer. Ultimately, that might not give you the right return for you, but think about your
Right.
customer. And then the last one is, and that's not always obvious, especially with the new generations, but I would say work hard. Work hard, work smart, work more than others. But I'll tell you, I've not been successful until, before I started to work hard.
Right. 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 What's your favorite way to switching off or recharging when you're not working?
Very easy. Be in the mountain. And for me, being in the mountain is, so on one hand, you could think, oh, as a type of sales leader, as a as a sales professional, you have this impression of being on the top of the world. That actually feels pretty good. But outside of that, funny things, for me, it's about, that disconnect, being disconnected, from the technology, being able,
Right.
to brace, and to really, refresh yourself. And I think that, being in the mountains, also allows you, to put things in perspective. You're like,
Right.
at the end of the day, we are so small in that world. And sometimes, you get bogged down, by small things. Look below you and look at, all that, that immensity, and that, you're really small. So I think that that actually can, put some nice perspective. And so for me, being in the mountain, whether it's in the summer, hiking, trail, mountain bike, or, the winter season is coming and I can't wait, going skiing.
Love it. Ludovic, you've been a fantastic addition to the episode. Thank you for paying your knowledge into the collective pool of wisdom. And thank you for sharing your insights with our listeners. We appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having me. It's great. Thank you.
Absolutely. My lovely people, if there's one thing this chat with Ludovic made very clear in my mind, it's that planning isn't paperwork. What it is, it's really power. It's the discipline that turns good intentions into predictable outcomes for you and your organization. And when it comes to executive engagement, it's just not about hierarchy, it's about alignment to getting the deal done, getting the right people in the right rooms at the right time with a shared story and a clear purpose. That's where real momentum happens. If this episode sparked a new idea about how your team plans to collaborate, share it with your colleagues and make sure you follow or subscribe us so you never miss another episode again. You can find out on b2bsalestrends.com or on our YouTube channel. Until the next time, my lovely people, look after yourself, your loved ones, and of course, your B2B customers. Bye-bye.